What is happening, Mind Body Masters, and welcome to episode number 21 of the podcast. Now, today we're going to be talking about something that I'm sure you can relate to, I'm sure you've experienced, and I'm sure you've probably experienced a fair bit of this in 2020 and 2021, and that is how stress affects your mind and also your body. So this is a really critical episode, and I'm going to take a bit more of a tangent here with the podcast and start talking about stress and how it affects us both physically and also mentally. So we're going to be talking all about stress today, what it is, how it affects you, and how to start moving through it, how to start overcoming it so that you can heal not only both physically, but also mentally and emotionally. So if that's something that sounds of interest to you, if you're someone who has dealt with stress in the past, this is going to be such a game changer for you, and I'm glad you're here. Hi, I'm Jay Curry. As a former chiropractor, I realised that people's physical symptoms started in their mind and not in their body, which is why I now teach people how to heal themselves from the inside out. Now, you don't need to be a monk or a mystic to heal yourself. You just need to learn how to master your mind-body connection. And this podcast is going to show you how. You're going to learn how to understand the hidden meaning of your symptoms, resolve the old emotional baggage that's kept you stuck, and gain practical tools to reduce the stress in your life. This is going to give you the ability to heal not only physically, but also spiritually. And this comes with a dangerous level of freedom. So let's help you become a mind-body master. So, how is stress affecting you? That's a really good question to start today's episode with, is how is stress affecting you? So what we're going to be talking about today is a new concept called stress imprints. Now, a stress imprint is pretty much exactly what it sounds. It is an imprint that occurs in both your body and mind as a result of some form of stress. Now, with stress is a pretty simple concept. It is essentially defined as the feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with some kind of mental or emotional pressure. So it's a pretty straightforward thing. And when I say the word stress, when I talk about stress, a lot of people don't think that stress can affect their mind or doesn't affect that it can affect their body unless it is huge and debilitating and very, very traumatic stress. Whereas today, I want to really bust that myth down. I really want you to start understanding how the brain doesn't really know the difference between huge traumatic stress and also just the everyday stress that we go through. Stress actually operates in a spectrum. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well. But for now, let's start just looking at that, and let's look at what stress is and how it affects us in a day-to-day capacity. So, as I said, stress is defined as that feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with some kind of mental or emotional pressure. Now, if you are like most people, chances are you've experienced some kind of stressful period, some kind of stressful time, some kind of stressful event somewhere in the course of your life. And my intention for today's podcast is to help you understand how these old events, old situations have imprinted themselves into your body and mind and are still affecting you today. Because when you understand this opens the door to healing. This opens the door to you moving through a lot of those old symptoms that might be rearing their head, might be flaring up, might be having a difficult time to overcome, but it also helps you to overcome a lot of the self-sabotaging patterns that you get into. So the behaviors of people-pleasing, the behaviors of not setting boundaries, of always trying to achieve and do too much in order to validate yourself and looking for external validation and being fearful, all of these kinds of behaviors. When you understand how stress works, you can start to see that stress is at the root of it all. And this is such a powerful place to be because that is something that you are completely in control of and completely able to start moving through yourself. So today's episode is going to be one of the most important ones, in my opinion, and one of the most important ones for you so that you can start to heal and overcome these limiting patterns and beliefs and mental predispositions that you might have. So let's look at this. Now, one of the things that I talk a lot about on the podcast is how stress affects the body. And I've talked at length about this. I've talked about how it causes various symptoms. And one of the ways that I want you to start to recognize this is just think about the last time that you had some kind of particular symptom or some kind of illness. Now, chances are, and I'm 100% guilty of this in the past as well, not so much these days, but in the past, when I was at uni and things like that, if I ever had some kind of illness pop up or I had some kind of pain pop up, the first thing that I would do is head straight over to Dr. Google. And I would immediately start Googling, what is this? What's causing this symptom? Why is it showing up? And why is it here? And evidently, pretty much every single thing that I would ever look up and search, I'm sure this is the case for you too, is when you've had some kind of symptom and you've looked it up on Dr. Google or WebMD or wherever it is that you search for the answers to your pains and your symptoms, chances are somewhere in the causes there, you'll see stress as being a cause. And this is something that science has known for years, is how that stress impacts the body. But what science has failed to recognize is how the specific types of stress impact the body. And that's something that we cover and understand in a lot of detail. We've even got programs and courses on that specifically, how to identify the types of stress that cause your pain. Like we know all this stuff. And if you're familiar with the podcast, this should be starting to become second nature to you. If it's not, go back and have a listen to some of the old episodes. So we know here, and we know at Mind Body Masters, how stress affects your body. And one of the ways that I like to think about this is stress causes your body to adapt and it causes your body to compensate. So a really simple example is, imagine you have to go for a 10K walk. I'm training for a marathon at the moment, which is fantastic fun. And this analogy really hits home for me. So if you were having to walk or run 10 kilometers and you had a stone in your shoe, and for whatever reason you couldn't remove that stone, if you kept running along over the course of 10 kilometers, well, that stressor on your foot is eventually going to cause your body to adapt. Eventually it's going to cause your body to compensate. And that compensation is designed to minimize the effect of that stress. And so chances are you'd be running along, you'd be all twisted, and after 10 kilometers, your back would be all hurting, your shoulders would be all out of whack, and all of this kind of stuff. Now, this is something that is a really easy and really simple thing to understand. But stress causes your body to adapt. And this is something we talked about a lot. But one of the other things that we don't talk about is how it causes your mind to adapt, how it causes your psyche to adapt, and how it causes mental and emotional changes and compensations. So one of the things that's on the rise this year, and this is really devastating, and it's really it really pains me, but one of the things with all of these lockdowns is in line with the pandemic is this has been one of the biggest stresses on humans that we've likely experienced. So many human beings have been isolated from their families, they've been isolated from their friends, they've been forced to close their businesses, they've been forced to give up their jobs. And needless to say, that is causing a lot of stress in people's lives. And it's no wonder that the rates of depression and the rates of suicide have been through the roof in light of these lockdowns, in light of these pandemics, and in light of all of the stress going on in the world. So, but with that, one of the things that people start to understand is that what's been going on this year is affecting people's mental states. It's causing things like depression. It's causing things like people feeling just flat and unmotivated and uninspired, and it can cause things like lacking in confidence and self-worth and all of these types of things. So stress not only causes your body to physically adapt, but it causes your mind to adapt as well. And it causes you to create some patterns and behaviors which we might label as depression, we might label as anxiety, we might label as self-sabotage, right? So these are all changes that occur in the mind as a result of stressful situations. So one of the things with stress, and this is something that a lot of people get confused about all the time, is when I'm talking about, hey, stress impacts your body, it leaves an imprint in your body and mind and can cause a whole host of symptoms, and it can cause a whole host of mental changes. Often people immediately think that stress needs to be huge. It needs to be incredibly traumatic. It's a soldier that's gone through war and seen the devastation of war. It's people that have been through famine. It's refugees that have had to come to their country on a leaky boat. It's people that have been through domestic violence and sexual abuse, and All of these horrific things. And yes, all of those things, those stressful events, can cause an impact in the body and also the mind. But what people don't realize is that stress, like a lot of things, is a spectrum. And those incredibly traumatic events sit at one end of the spectrum. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's your everyday run-of-the-mill stress. And the brain doesn't really know the difference between the two types of stress. It responds in exactly the same way. So having an argument with a friend, missing the school drop-off, not being there to pick up your kids from soccer because you were thinking about something else, I don't know, failing a task at school, failing a project at work. People often don't think that these everyday stresses that every single human being experiences at one point or another can affect their body and can affect their mind. And if I can do anything for you today in this podcast, is start recognizing that those stressful events in your life are impacting you the exact same way as someone who's been through war, someone who's been through some really traumatic events. Now, sure, it's a degree, and like I said, sure, it's a spectrum, and the people that have been through those atrocities are likely to have greater changes in their body and mind, but don't discredit what you've been through. Don't discredit the situations and stressful events in your life, and don't just discredit them saying that they can't be contributing to maybe some physical symptoms that you're struggling to overcome, or some self-sabotaging behaviors or depression. Don't discredit these stressful events as something that aren't contributing to what's going on for you. So just recognize, give yourself a bit of a break and say, well, hey, I don't have need to have gone through. Sure, there's a lot of people out there that have got it worse off than me, but doesn't mean that what I have been through doesn't impact my body. And one of the things with stress is stress often happens once in real life, but over and over and over and over again in your mind. Now, what I mean by this is, so when you go through something particularly stressful, something unexpected, something that you couldn't see coming, and like I said at the start, stress is simply defined as the feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with some kind of mental or emotional pressure, right? So doesn't necessarily equate to war, but when you go through something like this, your subconscious mind will take a snapshot of everything that it sees, hears, smells, tastes, and touches at that particular time. And so when you go through that situation, you'll feel your heart race, you'll feel your stomach churn, you'll feel a knot in your chest, you'll feel your throat tighten as you're in the moment of that event. And in those changes, your body is going to be creating physical adaptations to help you meet the demands of that stress, right? I always use the example, and I used it in the last podcast episode, of being chased by a lion, or imagine being mugged. Let's use being mugged as an example today. So if you got mugged in the street, chances are that would affect your physiology. That would make you that unexpected stress would cause your body to adapt and change. But what happens for most people is that once that stressful event is done, they continue to relive it again and again in their mind. And when you do this, every time that you're thinking or reminded of a particular stressful event, your brain does not know the difference. It does not know the difference between real stress and imagined stress. And what often happens for a lot of people is every time they're imagining that stress, and by the way, you're not conscious that you're doing this, you'll just be somewhat reminded that it might overcome you as a feeling. You might encounter a similar situation, or someone might say something that's kind of similar. You might have a dream about something, and these reminders cause your body to physically respond in exactly the same way. So stress is something that occurs once, but is relived again and again and again. And so the key to healing both physically and mentally and emotionally, is to find these, what I call stress imprints, these events that have imprinted on your brain and your body and your mind, and learn how to release them, learn how to let them go, so that you no longer relive them again and again and again. So it might be something simple, like you might have got bullied at school, you might have not made the football team, you might have felt like an idiot because you failed a particular exam, you might have had a bad breakup when you're a teenager. All of these events, which often people will just pass off as being quite trivial, or, oh, that can't be affecting me still. These events, because they're being relived over and over and over, are often the very things that are causing a lot of your symptoms and causing a lot of the further stress in your life. So start to give yourself a bit of a break. Start to not discredit yourself as much, and start to look at some of the smaller stresses that you've been through, and start giving them credit and going, hey, this thing's still affecting me. And a great way to tell if an old stressful event is still affecting you is, A, do you think about it? Like I always say to people, can you remember what you had for lunch on Tuesday 3 weeks ago? And unless you eat the same tuna sandwich every single day on Tuesdays, because teas are tuna days, is unless you're that kind of person, well, you likely can't remember what you had for lunch 3 weeks ago on Tuesday. But if I asked you to tell me about something stressful that happened as a kid, you'll be able to remember it clear as day. And so your brain, if you're able to remember some things that happened, if you remember getting bullied, if you remember having a bad breakup, if you remember failing that test, or you remember that time that your parents didn't pick you up from school, chances are you're reliving it. And in these little ways, it's causing your body to continually adapt again and again and again. So start to look at this. Start to realize that by going back in these events that you're reliving, when you're able to work through them, you no longer give them power, and you're able to let them go. And all of a sudden, you can have these events that don't have the same emotional charge. All of a sudden, these events of being bullied might feel the same to you as what it was like to eat a tuna sandwich. So that's the key here, is stress is something that occurs once, but it occurs again and again in our mind. And this is where you're in control. This is where you have the power to heal yourself, and heal yourself both physically and mentally, emotionally, is recognize these stress imprints that have occurred in your life. Recognize that they don't need to be huge, traumatic, completely overwhelming things, but regular human things. And then once you're able to reframe these, release these, and change your perspective around some of these events, all of a sudden they no longer carry the emotional charge. They no longer carry that same weightiness, that same energy. And when that's the case, you stop reliving them, and your body will physically no longer need to adapt. It'll no longer need to create these symptoms that you've been battling with, and you'll be able to heal. But not only that, you'll feel calmer, you'll feel more at peace, you will feel happier, more joyful, and more present. So when you, like I said, these stress imprints, they affect you both physically, but they affect you mentally. And one of the telltale signs, if you've got some kind of old stress imprint from the past, from some kind of event that you're reliving unconsciously, is this low-grade stress, this undercurrent of stress in your life. If you're someone who wakes up and you feel kind of anxious or stressed or worried or fearful, or maybe you get really worried about being criticized, or maybe you get really worried about upsetting people, or maybe you don't like to ask for what you need, or there's so many ways in which this occurs. And when you're able to go back and release and reframe and let these old events go, not only do you heal physically, but all of a sudden you start to feel more at peace throughout your day. So today's episode is all about understanding that stress is affecting you, and you don't need to have gone through the atrocities of the world in order for your body and mind to be responding. So start to give yourself credit, start to look at how stress has impacted you. And once you can start to do that and start to accept that, that's when you can start to heal that. And when you start to heal that from the inside, that is when you heal on the outside. So that is my message for you today, is recognizing that stress does impact you, recognizing that the events that you've experienced in your life have affected you, and start to recognize that when you're going through Dr. Google, that stress does have such an impact on both your body and also your mind. So guys, one of the other things with stress is, and I'm going to finish on this today, is we can't stop life from occurring. We can't stop stressful events from happening, because that's the thing about being a human, right? Is life is going to do its thing. But with stress, we can change how it affects us. We can change how we can let it happen, and we can let it rock our world. And when it rocks our world, it's going to affect us both physically and mentally and emotionally. But when things are going to happen, when you can find a way to be flexible and find a way to manage your stress and find ways to release that stress, that is going to make you such a healthy individual and someone who can really stand in their power and overcome stress regardless of what life throws at you. So it's all about being resilient, it's all about being flexible, and it's all about being able to manage stress. And when you are able to really effectively manage the stress in the present and release the stress from the past, this is when you really become what I like to call bulletproof. So that is my little parting message for you today. If you've liked this episode, if you've got a friend or a family member that's quite stressed at the moment, maybe they're going through lockdowns or a stressful period in their own life, send them this episode and start a conversation with them, because it might be a conversation that really changes and shapes their life. Because if you can start to get other people in your life to recognize the stress that they're experiencing and get them to start dealing with that stress, well, that's going to help those people heal, not only physically, but also emotionally. So be sure to share this episode, and I will see you guys on the next episode. As always, it's a pleasure, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Masters podcast. Now, everyone has the ability to heal themselves with the right tools, information, and guidance. So if you have someone in your life that needs to hear this message, please share this episode with them so they too can start healing from the inside out. Now, if you've liked this episode and you think more people need to hear this message, please give us a great rating on iTunes, because it helps more people to actually hear this message and realize the power that they have. Now, if you'd like more information and you'd like to access bonus video content and even have the ability to ask me questions directly, then head on over to my free Facebook group, the Mind Body Masters Heal Yourself from the Inside Out group. Or you can head on over to Instagram and slide into my DMs there. My handle is Jake_Curry. All right, guys, thank you so much again for listening, and I'll catch you again on the next episode.